In this video, we are going to talk about how to set up extra credit in Canvas. It's not difficult to do, and there are several ways to do it, but there are also some considerations that you need to think about depending on how you have your assignments and your grades set up. So we'll go ahead and look at some examples of how this can be done. So extra credit is not a default option in Canvas. There isn't a box that you can check or a setting that allows you to do extra credit, but it isn't difficult to set up an extra credit assignment. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I am working in a course that has been set up to have weighted grade groups or weighted assignment groups. That's covered in a previous video if you want to take a look at that. These extra credit methods are going to apply whether or not you have your course set up with weighted assignment groups. So if you're just doing straight points, you can use all of these extra credit methods as well, but things get a little more complex when you do have weighted assignment groups, so that's why I'm using this as my demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and add my extra credit assignment here, and I'm going to do that by clicking this plus assignment button. And I'm going to give my assignment a name, and I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to leave my points at 0. What setting this at 0 does is it allows me to give those bonus points to the students that have earned them, but it doesn't penalize the students that weren't given extra credit points. So now down here, as I said before, we're using weighted assignment groups in this demonstration, so I do need to put this assignment into an assignment group. I'm going to keep it in this group called assignments. Now, one note, if you are using weighted groups in your course, you have to make sure that any extra credit items are put into a group that has at least one other graded item in it, so one other item that has points. If every item in the group is worth 0 points, Canvas will not calculate that as part of the points for the course. I'm going to keep this as graded as points, and I'm going to come down here. You can really use any submission type for this on paper. If it is something that you're having your students turn in through Canvas, you could always put it as online or no submission if it's something that maybe you're giving extra points for. And then down here, I'm going to click Save and Publish. And now if I go to my Assignments tab, I can see that I have this extra credit item in here as part of my assignments group. Now, I will point out one thing here. If I click on my Grades tab, because this extra credit item, I'm going to drag this over here. Because this extra credit item is part of a weighted group, the amount of weight these points are given is going to go down if you add more items to the group. So what I mean by that is if Annie has 95 points here, she turned in an extra credit item, I'm going to give her 5 bonus points. If you look over here at the total, if I click enter, now her total has gone up to 100%. However, let's say she gets another 95 on essay number 2. As you can see, her total actually went down. So because this extra credit item is worth 5 points but is part of a weighted group, that percentage that is being given to the whole weighted category is going to decrease the amount of points that each item is worth as more items are added. So one suggestion might be if you do have extra credit items, you could maybe save them for a category that has less items in it. You may want to kind of play around with that extra credit item, so you might want to hide the particular assignment until you figured out how many points you want to give, because you may have to sort of play around with it. So just another couple of notes here about this. If I were to create a weighted group called extra credit worth 0% of the total, I can do that, but that's not going to have any impact on the grade. So even if I give my students bonus points on this extra credit assignment in the grade book, because it's worth 0% of the total, it's not going to actually increase my students' grades any. Now let's say instead I set it up so that I do have an extra credit weighted group worth 10% of the total. So I put my extra credit assignment in that. Now if I click on my grades, not only is it not going to have any impact on my students' grades, I'm also going to get an error message here. So I have this little exclamation point next to my total that says score does not include extra credit because it has no points possible. So if I do want to make this work with weighted groups, I have to put that extra credit item in a category with other items that are worth points. So another way I could go about giving extra credit to students is I could just give my student extra points on an existing assignment. So let's say that I want to give the student, instead of a 95, I want to give her 100. I can do that, and now you can see that that has affected the grade. So another way that you can give out extra credit points is to add points directly to a quiz. So if I go to my quizzes tab and I click on a quiz that I'm grading, I can go to my speed grader and I can look at the student's quiz. Let's say I go through, I've graded it, and I want to give what they call fudge points. So I could give the student 2 fudge points, update the score, and now he's got a 24 out of a 25. So that's another easy way. So one other way that you could give extra credit points would be at the end of the semester through the score override feature. And you can get to that by clicking on this gear and going to this advanced tab. Now, this allow final grade override isn't necessarily meant just for extra credit. This is really if you need it for whatever reason to be able to override the grade that is in that final column or the total column in the Canvas gradebook. But if you did have a final extra credit assignment that you wanted to add in, you can click this button here to allow the final grade override, click update, and you'll now have an override column here. I can just go ahead and manually turn this 75 into an 80, click enter, and now that student has an 80 instead of a 75. So there are a lot of ways that you can manipulate the grades and give your students some extra credit points, but you do have to be careful, again, especially if you are using weighted groups in your course, because sometimes messing around with adding those assignments in that are worth 0 points can have some unintended consequences. So you may want to use the feature where you can click the kebab and hide grades until you've messed around with it and gotten the grade that you want and have it set up the way you want it to be.